Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
If you were listening yesterday, you heard this audio from a debate performance in Ohio the other night on Fox 8 there.
20 years ago, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. That very same year, Tim Ryan went to Washington, D.C., where he has been failing at his basic job for 20 years. Talks a big game, but the record of accomplishment just isn't there. I think there's something very basic here. I think that people deserve certain things. Ohioans deserve certain things from their federal leadership. They deserve to go to the grocery store and be able to afford food without it breaking the bank. They deserve streets that you can walk down safely. They deserve a country that has a border. I promise. We may not always agree on everything, but I'll never forget where I came from, and I'll never stop fighting to achieve those things for the people who deserve them. This is such an important election. I'd encourage people to go to jdvance.com and support me, but at the end of the day, the question here is whether we need new leadership in this state. Double down on the last 2 years of failed leadership or take this country in a different direction. I thank you all for listening. I thank you for watching, and I hope to earn your vote. God bless you guys.
That was JD Vance in his debate against longtime Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan. And JD Vance joins me now from Ohio. How are you?
Eric, good to be with you. I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, that was great. I got to tell you, that was a fantastic debate performance the other night. It was nice in the moments I saw. You're not yelling at each other so much. You're just delivering a strong contrast to a man who for 20 years has essentially had a love affair with the political press corps, claiming to be something that he's not, and in reality just another reliable vote for the Democrats.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was a lot of fun. I certainly think it came out of it ahead, and I think that was the perception of most people who watched it as well. Shockingly, Eric, usually these debates don't really matter, but it looks like a lot of people watched the debates. I mean, the estimates we've heard just in the Cleveland metro area, well over 100,000 people tuned in, and you spread that across Cincinnati, Columbus, the rest of the state. We probably hit pretty solid viewership. But the guy's been running a campaign pretending to be something that he's not. It was fun to get on the stage with him, correct the record a little bit, and let people know who I was. So I enjoyed it, and we'll do it again next Monday.
Now, I want to throw a theory out here at you, and this goes to both of your backgrounds. So I was at CNN for 3 years before you got there, and then jumped over to Fox News. In 2016, wasn't a Trump supporter and had reliable, regular engagements with members of the media, standing invitations to come on shows. The moment I said that I was going to support Trump, I mean, invitations got canceled, and these shows never had me on again. And here's a guy who writes Hillbilly Elegy, who's on CNN, who Democrats are reading the book and praising it, and then you come out and say in 2020 you're supporting Trump and you're a Republican. And I think more than any other candidate running for any office this year, the mainstream media has gone after you harder. I mean, you're reading the press corps, you would think you were behind in the polls there and that Tim Ryan's a shoo-in, because the media just can't stand that you didn't toe the line and you weren't who they presumed you were. And I'm remarkable this entire time how the press coverage of you in particular as a candidate has been just disparaging from mainstream outlets, even though you're winning.
Yeah, it's weird, Eric. I definitely think there's an element of, people hate a heretic more than anything, and I think a lot of these people assumed that I was one of them just because I didn't like Trump in 2016, and then, I thought he did a great job as president, and in some ways, more importantly, I thought the left went completely off the deep end. And so there's this sense of betrayal, and you can definitely see it in the coverage. Morning Joe in particular, I remember how much he used to fawn all over my book, and frankly, he used to fawn all over Trump himself as well. And now I am like enemy number one to the cast and crew of the Morning Joe show. So I think it's just part of the media environment. I will say, Eric, and it sounds like you've learned this in the same way. We always have to be ourselves. We always have to be independent and form our own judgments based on what we think is going on in the world. But I think the media environment is such that if you want to say anything of real value, they're going to come after you. The only thing that's really okay is conventional, boring pablum. And if you're not doing the conventional, boring talking points, they're going to find some way to attack you. And, I almost think if the media is attacking you, I trust that you're saying something worthwhile. That's more important than almost any other signal.
Now, whenever I have candidates come on, I try to talk about the local issues in their states, and not just the big, broad national economic issues or Democrats are bad or what have you, but always try to get something local. What I've noticed this year is that it doesn't matter who the candidate is and what state they're in, and I've heard you talk about this too. Fentanyl is really a state-level problem exacerbated by the policies of the Democrats in Washington in terms of the border.
No, that's exactly right. And it has many different varieties and many different forms, too, Eric. So, of course, you have the most obvious thing, right? People who are losing their lives, people who maybe would have been addicted to drugs 2 or 3 years ago are now dying because of how intensely poisonous this stuff is. The second angle of it is that you've got a generation of grandparents who are raising children, and almost nobody talks about these guys. One of the most, I think, heroic groups of people in our state. They don't get any real attention from the media, certainly not from our political leaders. Of course, you've got a generation of children who have been orphaned by it. You have a hospital system that's really overwhelmed by this problem. If you talk to anybody in the state of Ohio, they'll tell you good luck finding a mental health facility that will take you in if you have a serious problem, because they're all overwhelmed by the drug problem. So it has so many different layers. And what I really bothers me about the issue is so much of it's preventable. Like, you're always going to have addicts, right? As long, I'm a Christian, I know you are too. As long as you've had sinful people are going to get addicted to things. However, this particular poison is a problem, and we really, really have to do something about it.
Now, beyond the fentanyl issue, Ohio is a state that fascinates me because, you've got the eastern Rust Belt area of Ohio moving west towards Indiana and up towards the Great Lakes. It's economically diverse, manufacturing, and also this growing tech corridor. How do you see the big future needs of Ohio? And in the Senate, how would you prioritize them?
You mentioned, of course, right, there's sort of a few really big national issues here. There's the inflation issue, which I really think of as an energy issue. And specifically, this touches Ohio and probably Pennsylvania more than any other states in the union. We have a huge natural gas sector here that could become much, much larger. And it's not just a natural gas workers issue or just an energy consumer price issue. It's also a manufacturing issue. You cannot manufacture unless you have quality natural gas that's sort of being pumped into the market. Obviously, the crime issue, the immigration issue, especially as it relates to the fentanyl problem. Ohio is interesting, of course, and I'm from the southern part of the state where this is not an issue at all. But, we of course have Lake Erie forms the majority of our northern border in Ohio. And I don't think a lot of people realize, I certainly didn't realize public policy, how much of the modern manufacturing sector depends on transport from the upper Midwest and Canada down to the lower Midwest through those Great Lakes. So there's a lot of infrastructure actually we need to rebuild when it comes to Great Lakes shipping, and that's obviously very important to northern Ohio. But again, that's an issue that affects us nationally too, because if you don't have iron ore coming from the upper Midwest, you're not going to have any manufacturing.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought about that issue as well. I appreciate that. So, moving forward, we're less than a month from the campaign. You are ahead in the polling. The media just, after a 20-year love affair with Tim Ryan, he's always going to be the Speaker of the House. He's always going to stand up and challenge Nancy Pelosi, and he never does. What do you see in this last month as really shaping the lay of the land for voters in Ohio?
There are a couple of different dynamics, right? So one is that I do think that I'm ahead and I have the momentum, so I just need to avoid making a mistake, right? I think about that as a candidate's perspective. If I think about it demographically and politically, I think about 10% or so of the electorate is undecided on the Senate race, but really should go for me. And so, these are moderate to center-right voters. They tend to be pretty conservative on criminal justice issues, certainly on economic issues. And I've got a tough challenge of really appealing to those voters and making sure they make a decision and they make it in the right way. So that's how I see the next 28 days. Obviously, raising a lot of money, making sure that we stay on TV, that we're pounding the pavement on the ground. All those things really matter, but they're ultimately to the end of getting that 10% to make a decision, and most of them to get it to make it for me.
Now, two more questions here before I let you go. One is just your background and your story. I've read your book. I know your story. You went to the Marines. You went to Yale. You did well in life. You're kind of the epitome of the American success story, having been raised by your grandparents essentially and do this. How do you see access for the younger generations, the Gen Zers out there who, in the economic malaise we have right now, how do you see your role as a senator to try to help them access the American dream?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I guess I just see this as we've really failed, I think, the millennials and the Gen Z folks. If you look at a lot of the statistics, home ownership not really accessible to a lot of our young people. Obviously, the college debt crisis, which I don't think the solution is to forgive student debt. I think it's to force the universities to really foot more of the bill instead of paying high-priced administrators. I think the basic trappings of middle-class life, a home, a family, a little bit of stability. If you've got two parents at home, which hopefully everybody does, one of those parents gets to spend at least a few years at home with the kids if they so choose. Those things are really inaccessible to a lot of young people, and I think that it's not all economic. Of course, I'm skeptical of the idea that all of these issues are economic, but you certainly got to make home ownership and higher wages more accessible to people. And I think that if you did, you might start to solve some of the deeper issues that I really, really worry about, which is not enough young families being started, a lot of instability, a lot of childhood trauma. Obviously, something I saw growing up. But we want to make sure young people have the American dream accessible to them. And right now, a lot of them just don't feel it.
Now, last question. Speaking of young people, you've got a wife and young kids. How do you balance being out on the campaign trail with also being accessible for your family?
Yeah, it's very hard. It's definitely the thing that I think I've struggled with the most on the campaign trail. Politicians whine about how much you don't sleep and how much you're on the road. It's actually not a very hard job in almost any way except for that one. Our oldest is 5, our youngest is 9 months, so we've got some pretty tiny ones. We have 3 total. And, I think that what we've tried to do is sacrifice a little bit more sleep in the evening or in the morning. And that way I get home and at least can have dinner with the kids or breakfast with the kids, take my son to school. You just try to carve out little days. And sometimes you go a week where 6 days I don't see my kids, and that's really tough. Most weeks we've been able to at least create enough space for the family, but it's something you have to balance pretty hard. And it's something that I think, unfortunately, this is one of the reasons why a lot of younger people don't run for office, is because it's so family.
Well, I mean, you got kids your age, you're not getting any sleep anyway. So, I mean, what's the difference? Look, thank you for taking time out to talk. Best of luck to you on the campaign trail. I have continually been impressed as your evolution of a candidate. And I'll be honest with you, JD, I started somewhat skeptically looking at you, and you are, I'm just, one, your authenticity comes across, and two, you're so much not the candidate that so many people in the media would have people believe. When you actually look at your campaign, your issues, and just how you present yourself on the debate stage and off, you've become a deeply impressive candidate. I'm proud of you, honestly, just watching you evolve, knowing your backstory, where you are today, about to, I think, be in the Senate. And you're going to just deeply be an impressive senator from Ohio. So thank you for stopping by.
I appreciate it, Eric. Take care.
You too. JD Vance, he's going to be the next senator from Ohio. And again, I mean that in all sincerity. I've watched him evolve as a candidate. I treated him skeptically and saw his growth as a candidate over time. He has been fantastic on the campaign stage. He has developed as a candidate in just really good ways. A guy who's never run for office before. And I think, again, it's very notable that when you compare JD Vance, someone who's never run for office before, with some of the other candidates who have never run for office before, the media generates hit jobs on him in a way they don't these other candidates, and yet he's outperforming very many of them. And I really do think it goes back to, as he said, heretics are hated the most in the media. He was portrayed as a working class Democrat. He's now a working class Republican, raised himself up, an American success story, and he's deeply resented in the media. So I was glad he was willing to stop by and talk. And I really do think he's going to be the next senator from Ohio, despite it really is weird when you read about his campaign in the press. They despise him so much. And then you look at the poll and you're like, wait a second. You read the press clippings, it looks like he's toast, and actually he's ahead. He's going to win. He's going to be a great senator. We're not always going to agree, but I'm going to know he means it when he says what he says.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.